Hello, I'm Colin Gallagher, CEO at Onward and Upward, and you're listening to the Association Insights podcast, where each week we interview association leaders from across the country to hear how they're trying new things, taking big risks, and delivering value for their members. We'll explore the realities of what it means to work in and with associations and bring you the insights and inspiration you need to advance your career and make big changes at your association. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Association Insights podcast. I'm your host, Colin Gallagher, and I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. Jeanne Metzger of the Association of Corporate Citizenship Professionals is joining us. She's the Vice President of Membership, Marketing, and Communications. Yes, you heard that right, all three of those. In this role, Jeanne leads marketing, comms, and sponsorship efforts and focuses on the strategic and logistical oversight of the membership function. She brings more than 25 years of experience strengthening association value propositions and elevating brands. Prior to ACCP, Jeanne served as Chief Development and Marketing Officer at Exponent Philanthropy, Chief Marketing Officer at the National Venture Capital Association, and worked in the Government Affairs Department at the National Association of Health Underwriters. I know she's got some amazing experience and insights to share with our listeners today, and I'm just thrilled to have her on. Jeanne, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so pleased to be here.
Awesome. To start, I would just love for you to give our audience that doesn't know ACCP some background on your mission, your members, and really, what you serve and what you do.
Sure. So ACCP is a premier membership organization working to improve the effectiveness of corporate social impact professionals. We connect our members to the people, the knowledge, and the support they need to catalyze change in their companies and in communities. So corporate social impact is our umbrella term for people who initiate corporate social responsibility, employee engagement, employee volunteerism, and corporate giving programs within major corporations. Not everyone knows what that means, but we work really in a couple areas where we advance knowledge and practice through all of our programming and resources. We provide a supportive peer so our members can learn from one another and support one another. And then we really try to elevate the importance of this work and broaden the understanding of why companies engage in society the way they do.
I love that. I'm sure your members are relying on you more than ever these days, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But I do want to touch on the fact that you have this really extensive background in membership and marketing and comms across multiple associations. And I do love that about the association world. I do feel like so many people that work in associations stay in associations, and it's a really special kind of bubble and its own world and a different way of working. So I'd love to hear more about what led you to this space and really what gets you most excited about the work you're doing now.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I got my start in government relations. I was a political science major in college and really wanted to move to Washington, D.C. and work on Capitol Hill. And so that's what I did right after graduation. Never landed a job on Capitol Hill, but ended up in the association world in government affairs, really specifically around grassroots advocacy. And I think because of that grassroots advocacy work, I realized that I really love working with people. And so membership translated into that. And I was also just very lucky that when I was working at the National Venture Capital Association, I was there at a time when the industry was growing. It went from an industry that no one had ever heard of, and it was during the dot-com boom in the 1990s. And all of a sudden, the world realized what venture capital was and what it meant and how it was changing everyone's lives, and more venture capital funds were created. And we had really an opportunity to grow the organization. But it was a very small organization that really had a very narrow focus on lobbying. And one day I said to the executive director, I said, I think we really have an opportunity here to get more members and build awareness of who we are. And he looked at me and said, that sounds like a great idea. Why don't you do that and hire someone for your job? And I was like, okay. And I was 20 something. And I was very lucky to be in that situation and was able to build a membership marketing department from scratch, and then went on to build a business development non-dues revenue function there as well.
That's amazing. I love that. Hey, go do it. I think that is like special to associations, and what an opportunity, especially in your 20s. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I made a little joke during your intro, but your title really does cover a lot. That is 3 positions at some associations. So you've got all of this going on. How do you balance these responsibilities, and where are you focusing most of your energy right now?
Yeah, so in addition to what is included in my title, I'm also the lead for fundraising. Uh, yeah, so I would say right now I'm really focused on fundraising because we do a lot of our getting our sponsors in the beginning of the year. Many of our members don't actually get their budgets until January, and so they can't make commitments to our sponsorship opportunities until then. So Q1 is very heavy fundraising. But communications also right now is a big focus area. We just welcomed a new CEO. So we've been working with her and working with her to try and find her voice and where she really wants to, how she wants to make a mark on the field and what she really wants to be talking about externally. Also working to adjust our messaging based on this new environment. A lot of our members are integrated with or touch in some way diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in their companies. When they're investing in communities, there's an element of equity in that work, which is very important. And so we really are working on how do we tell our members' story on their behalf because many of them are scaling back their external communications and really adjusting the languages and trying to profile members and how they're making a positive impact in community.
Yeah, I imagine now is probably a really tough time for a lot of your members, and so the association has that ability to be the one that can take the heat, take the target off their backs. How else are you helping members navigate this moment?
Yeah, so a couple of ways. So I think first and foremost, we're providing a safe space for members to come together and share information and learn from one another and find out. Our members always are asked by their executive, what is X company or what are their competitors doing to inform their strategy? And ACCP, associations in general, provide that space where different companies and different people can get together and connect and learn from one another and get market intelligence that they can't get elsewhere as part of that community. And so we're really trying to foster different opportunities to do that. So we've been hosting some safe space, member only peer conversations. We have an executive network for the most senior executives within our member companies that oversee corporate social impact. This was the topic of their monthly conversation as well. We just did a survey. We do survey our members in order to identify trends and report on those trends. So we did a pulse survey in January specifically on how is the new presidential administration impacting your work. So we've been analyzing that data and getting ready to release it at the end of this month.
Oh,
So really providing a safe space for members to learn from one another, sharing trends so they can make informed decisions, and again, elevating this work so that corporate executives and society understand the importance of the work.
I imagine that's so valuable right now because I feel like probably these functions, a lot of companies are probably one or two people. It's not bigger companies, obviously it's a department, but to have those other people to connect with and in a safe space where you don't have to worry about it becoming public, that's got to really matter for your members.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. In really large companies, the corporate social responsibility departments tend to be small. It's just a couple people. There's a couple exceptions to that, particularly in like the banking and finance industry. Those teams tend to be larger. Retail tend to be a little bit larger because they're doing community volunteer events where they have retail stores. But most companies are very small departments, even though they're large companies from a revenue and employee perspective.
Yeah, wow. So you mentioned earlier about some companies having to maybe scale back or change their public facing messaging. What other trends are you seeing in how your members and just companies in general are approaching social impact and CSR given the landscape we're in right now?
Yeah, I think they are. I will say that our data shows that the majority of our member companies are continue to be committed to this work. They also, the majority continue to be committed to diversity, equity, inclusion as well, because they understand that this work has positive business impacts and outcomes. And people want to work for companies that do provide them an opportunity to give back to their communities. It's important work and it continues. So I mentioned that there's less external communications about the work. I think many of our members are changing the language they use to use more neutral terms. So instead of DEI, many are switching to terms like inclusion. Instead of ESG, many companies are switching to sustainability or responsible business. So neutral terms, less controversial. I think they're also looking at their programs to make sure that they are consistent with regulations and the law and can move forward in ways that mitigate risk.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly going to be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years, but it's good to hear there's still the commitment to these programs. And I do think today's workforce, especially those coming into it, they want this. They want this of
Yep.
their employers. So it's hard to see it going away. I think, like you said, it's just changing the way it's worded, less outward facing publicity for the moment, but I, I, tides go back and forth, and I feel like this one will come back strong.
Yeah, there is so much data to support the business case for this work in terms of how it helps employee recruitment and retention, how it drives profits, how it builds brand loyalty. Yeah, and that's one of the things that we do as an association is to highlight that data. We actually have a publication that we put out every May called Making the Case for Corporate Social Impact. And it's a compilation of data from other sources around a messaging framework to help our members make the case for their work because we hear from them that they constantly are being asked to defend their budgets and their programs.
I'm sure. I believe it. That's a fantastic resource for sure. You talked a little bit about some of the opportunities for your members to come together in those safe spaces, and I know you have a really strong focus on fostering a peer learning community in general. So, what are some of the most valuable ways that your members do engage with each other, and how has that changed? Is that any different now, or is it more of the same?
So I will say our conference has been our flagship event and what has built, I think, the most meaningful relationships within our community and continues to be. And we also see now during the pandemic, we obviously moved everything online and we're doing a lot of virtual community building. But our members really are hungry to get back in person. And we started last year doing local happy hours to get members together and also to connect with prospective members. And that program has been very well received. So we are moving towards doing some more things in person. But that said, we have an online community that is extremely active with members asking each other questions all the time and supporting one another and sharing information. And that continues to be a very important forum. We also do virtual peer discussions on a monthly basis. And I think the success of those is really making sure that the topics are timely and relevant and really responding to our members' needs at those particular times. So we're continuing to do that. And then this year, we're actually going to try a couple of new things, which I'm excited about. We're going to introduce something called peer circles, where we're actually putting together like small groups of people to connect on a regular basis for a limited period of time. So I'm really excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back on in a year from now to see how that worked because we're hearing a lot of demand for that actually. That's interesting you're doing that, but people want like the really connections that are those smaller groups that can be a lot bigger than having this big meeting, someone they can call, rely on, talk to. So I'll be curious to hear how that unfolds, but I imagine it I can't talk to a membership person without talking recruitment and retention. Obviously, that is the biggest aspect of an association continuing to succeed because without your members, who are you? So what have you guys found most effective on this front? And do you have any insights on what other associations can do to better communicate their value to members?
I'm sure I can try. So I would say for retention, tracking engagement, I think, is really important. And so we implemented a new association management system in 2021 and implemented, I don't know, it's not necessarily sophisticated, but we really are tracking engagement very intentionally. And we have integrated our association management system with this online community and another platform. And so we have a pretty robust view of engagement of our members, which really allows us to identify those members who might be low engaged and do targeted intentional outreach to them. And I think that has helped us retain members because members that are engaged most often are the ones that are going to renew, and the ones that we see not renewing are those that may be unengaged. So tracking engagement, I think, is really important. In terms of recruitment, we get a lot of our new members from existing member referrals. And so it's like nurturing those natural ambassadors within our community and giving them the tools they need to very easily share information about ACCP. So we have a member get a member campaign website that has talking points, it has sample emails, it has sample social posts that our members can really easily use to share information about the value that they get from the organization. And that's been very helpful. We also, these local events that we've been doing have been one of the best ways to connect with prospective members. And especially because it's prospective members and existing members. And so those people who may not be familiar with the organization hear firsthand from a member about all the great things about us. As a membership recruitment person, I don't really have to do, I just need to foster those connections and the conversation flows. And then finally, I would say content marketing. And many of our events are open to non-members. And typically, that is the first entry point in terms of how we engage prospective members. And then we see them become members over time. Sometimes that's in a few months, sometimes that's a few years. It depends on their ability to join and their budgets. But then also, in addition to programs, data. So we do put out an annual report of trends in the industry. We make sure that actually goes to everybody and is broad. And we have a couple lead gen mechanisms so that we can share information with non-members, but we're also capturing their information so that we can follow up with them.
Yeah, I love all of that. One thing that really stands out for me though is that members really being the ones that drive new membership. And I think it was the first year we did this podcast. We had someone come on, and the way he worded it was so perfect. He said, "No one tells a member story like a member." And I was
Right.
like, yes. And so finding ways to let them tell the story for you, that's golden. So I love that. Looking ahead, what do you think membership marketing and comms professionals at associations really need to be prioritizing over the next couple of years?
That's a tough question. So I guess a couple of thoughts is one is, how to engage Gen Z because they are the future and they digest information, I think, differently than you and I do, or the generations that came before them. They very much are a digital first generation. They hate email, and associations typically communicate through email. And so I just understanding Gen Z, learning from Gen Z, and adjusting communication and marketing practices, I think, are going to be important for associations. I also think I've been talking a lot internally about user experience this year. I've heard this from, I think, even on this podcast and others, is that traditionally associations have clunky technology. And that turns people off. And in today's world, I think that user experience needs to be easy and seamless because that's going to make the first good impression on your potential members and customers. I also don't like thinking about membership solely as members. It's most organizations, it's like you have customers, right? So you have different ways to engage your constituency. Membership is only one way of engaging that constituency and that target market, and only one way of frankly generating revenues. That's also something to, I think, a mind shift for associations.
Yeah, that's so good. Storytelling is obviously a huge part of effective corporate social impact work. So for associations that want to tell that same story like your members are trying to tell, how can they better showcase what they're doing on this front to really drive engagement and build trust?
Yeah, I think it's really important to marry data with heartfelt stories. One is not sufficient without the other. And I think that's really the key of what are the elements that make a good story. And that how are you impacting real people? How are you touching emotion? And then how do you have data to verify it?
Yeah, that's so spot on. Data plus a story. You can't have just the story doesn't work, just the data doesn't work. You really need them both. So I love that. I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you could only give one key piece of advice, your best advice for association leaders that are trying to enhance their comms marketing membership strategies in today's very crazy world, what would that be?
Um, Bring in marketing communications at the very beginning at a conceptual stage of new programs, initiatives, and just overall strategy. Very often, I feel like marketing is an afterthought, and a group of executives or people with a department creates a whole new program and then like hands it to marketing and says, "Here, market this." And that's such a missed opportunity. The marketing communication folks are interacting with their target market all the time, have great insight in what's going to work, what's not going to work, what's needed. And so just making sure that they have a seat at the table.
Yeah, amen. I could not say it better. I think that is absolutely true and so important. Jeannie, this has just been fantastic, and I so appreciate everything you've shared with our listeners. I know they'll find this so valuable. Before we let you go, though, we like to wrap up every podcast with our just for fun questions so our audience can get to know you a little more. Have you gotten to get away to anywhere fun lately?
So I have. I work so I can travel. It's
Love it.
one of my family's passions. And so over the holidays, we went to Chile and Easter Island, which was a bit of a bucket list trip, and it was really wonderful.
That is so cool. That's actually on my bucket list. I would love to go to Easter Island. That's amazing.
I highly recommend Easter Island. It was really
Oh my
cool.
gosh, that's awesome. All right. Are you a podcast listener? And if so, what would you recommend our listeners add to their lists?
So it's interesting. I don't listen to that many podcasts, but I listen to your podcast religiously. Thank you for all this great work that you're doing. Occasionally, I'll listen to Harvard Business Reviews, has some podcasts that I enjoy. I actually just this past week was listening to Brene Brown's Dare to Lead podcast. So those are two that come to mind.
I could listen to Brene Brown talk forever. I love her. That's awesome. Okay, what's one place in the US you've never been to but are dying to go?
Montana.
Ooh, yeah, good one. All right.
Yeah, it looks so beautiful.
It does. I know. I know. The pictures are just gorgeous. Okay, last one. Finish the sentence. When you see me looking at my phone, it probably means that I'm.
That means that I'm looking at the next news story that's breaking.
Yeah.
I've always been a news hound, and the last couple of months have not helped that.
No, I hear you. Awesome. Gee, thank you again. It was such a pleasure having you on the podcast today.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode. The Association Insights Podcast, previously known as the Association 100 Podcast, is a production of Onward and Upward Marketing and Communications, where our mission is to make associations and nonprofits the go-to source in their industries through earned media and thought leadership. This podcast is an extension of our newsletter, a bi-monthly collection of best practices, top trends, helpful ideas, and smart strategies delivered straight to your inbox. Have you undertaken a big change at your association? Or do you have some words and wisdom from the trenches of association life? We want to hear from you, and so do our listeners. Drop us a note at info@onwardupward.com. That's info@onwrdupwrd.com. Be sure to subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and share with your friends and colleagues. We're available anywhere podcasts are found. Come back next week for more association insights and inspiration. Thanks for tuning in.